Thank you all so much for joining us for today's Tech Talk, Smarter Application Delivery and Citrix VDI with Numecent. I am so excited to introduce you to our two hosts today, Doug Feifner, Chief Technology Officer of Numecent, and Todd Hugh, President of Farouk Systems. Before I pass it to Todd, I wanted to invite our audience to submit any questions they have in the Q&A below. We'll be answering questions throughout the webinar and at the end. So without further ado, Todd, I'll pass it to you to get us started.
Right. Hey, welcome. Thanks for joining us on the Veterans Day or Remembrance Day in Canada. So I don't know if you guys have a day off, or I think in Canada it's like a semi-day off, and so I don't know if you've taken your day off to actually join us. Thank you very much. So today we had the pleasure of welcoming our new partner, Numecent, to join us for this webinar. We're gonna go through the story why we're better together. We're gonna let Numecent talk about all the challenges in today's application management, and or historically why it has been a very, very tough challenges in corporate enterprise IT, and they'll go through their philosophy on centralizing on everything, and how do we deal with legacy applications, and going through some really fun real world examples, as well as what make them so special, and for those of you who have a Citrix environment that usually they're very large scales these days. What does the value bring to bring to that environment? So we're gonna go through that. Next. So first of all, welcome everyone again, and a little introduction of who are we? Who is Farouk Systems? So we call ourselves the masters of end user infrastructure, and this is a brainstorm result, like a mission that we defined, courtesy of the I guess the godfather or the Yoda of end user computing, Mr. Mark Templeton, the longtime CEO of Citrix Systems, that took the company from $300 million to $3 billion in his time, right? And we went through a lot of searching about what we do, and for those of you who know me, those of you who don't, but it's okay, you could probably Google it. I've been around in this business for almost 30 years, 28 years this year, and I grew up with the you want to call it the Citrix business, or the end user computing business, and we have always had a very strong practice, a lot of expertise in that virtual desktops and application world. And as we were sitting down and actually defining ourselves, we believe that that is the desktops and the apps will always be there, and these days probably includes browsers as the new desktop. And what we do is that we have the whole expertise about everything that make it happen. So we call ourselves the end user infrastructure business, right? And so that's really us in a nutshell. Farouk Systems have a lot of a long history in this arena, and probably touch many of you. Either you know it or you don't, but we can talk about that later. I'll pass this down to our friends at Numecent.
Thanks, Todd. Great to be here today and partnering with Farouk Systems. For those of you not familiar with Numecent, we were founded in 2012 with the mission to really uh, simplify the management and mobilization of Windows applications, right? So we have a technology portfolio. As you can see, we have about 67 patents in the space by our world-class team of developers and Windows experts to really help those large enterprises seamlessly package and deploy, tens of thousands of applications across the world, really, getting to about 3 million users, leveraging, different modern desktops and multi-cloud environments. These include some of the top Fortune 100 enterprises and MSPs and higher education institutions. So that's kind of Numecent. We'll talk through more of our technology here in a minute. So together, again, we're partnering from Numecent's point of view. How you manage those applications are key. With Numecent technology, you can bring more than 98% of your application coverage for the different OSs that you might have for Windows. We eliminate the image sprawl, which really helps with management, eliminating compatibility issues, and really being able to now take those applications across whatever type of hybrid environments you have with Citrix.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And from the Farouk side, because we are a very possibly, I want to say possibly one of the biggest virtual desktops and app consulting and managed services organization now in North America. We have a long-standing history, a lot of experiences. I don't. We did a math the other day that's over 100,000 hours delivered for 400 plus years of combined experience. That makes us sound really, really old, but it does actually present a tremendous value and obviously a lot of hands-on resources that allows us to actually help all our customers to deploy these technologies much faster, much more reliable, and one of the most important thing, and I always believe in, is a better design, right? So I think that together, the story is that we could leverage the great technology from Numecent and really optimize the speed to delivery in solving these application sprawl problems, or some people would say, well, it's an application nightmare that happens on a cycle because every few years you have this platform changes, you have these important updates on various applications, and be it in different verticals, but there's always that crunch time that you really need to actually get things current and get things supported, and we can definitely get to the result much faster and more resilient and also future ready, right? We'll talk about why it's future ready with Doc.
Great. So maybe we talk about some of the challenges that these enterprises are facing. A key one is that they're using a lot of different dispersed tools to try to deploy out applications. Typically, that's for a number of reasons. Either they have a lot of legacy applications that just don't work in these modern tools, or they have very complex modern applications that also don't fit in. So they kind of have the middle part that kind of works with the tools, but they have all these edge cases that don't. And then that leads to having to have multiple base images to compete to actually make these applications work. You have to worry about broken installs and trying to update the OSs now with all these. I'm sure, Todd, you've seen a lot of the same problems on your side.
Yes, absolutely. we did a quick math. Just on forget about the middle size or small size businesses, just on the enterprise accounts that we had, we had that signed the Citrix CPO platform licenses. They're all in that they're all 10,000 or above in user counts. The amount of applications we need to actually support in these places it really is mind-boggling. We're talking about thousands, if not tens of thousands, of various application, different versions, different flavors, and different install type too, right? In different type of devices. So that really becomes like becomes time consuming. It becomes a nightmare, and I think that and that's what Doug is actually referring to, and especially that there's no consistencies, right? Some are natively installed in the base image, right? Some are deployed as a package, different type of packaging. Well, I'll let you guys go through it. I'll let you go through it, Doug. But really, every time I talk about this, I started to have my head goes like twice as big because just so much headaches.
Right. Yeah, that's exactly right. So
Yeah.
let's start a little bit maybe with the legacy side of things. From our perspective, it kind of fits into these 4 categories, these legacy apps. Obviously, Windows has been around for quite a long time, used in enterprise. So you'll have these very old applications that publishers maybe put out years ago for XP. Maybe they're still around, but they don't support those versions. They're all end of life at this point. And more importantly, you probably have a lot of large enterprises that wrote their own line of business applications. And again, those were probably done quite a long time ago. They may not have the developers anymore, maybe on an old code base, Cobalt or something like that. That they don't want to try to support, or some of these enterprises, frankly, don't even have the source code anymore to those line of business apps they created. So that's kind of what we put into this 16-bit application bucket of these applications that are so old they're just not supported. Hand in hand with that is sort of the package formats. You might have that these are old installers and they don't recognize the newer OS versions. But there's also a lot of one-off ways that enterprises, because they come up with solutions, they try their best. They have these one-off methods to try to do package, install, or whatever zip archive they're trying to push out, and they just don't work anymore. Again, on the modern operating system. Next is kind of the key. As you mentioned, Todd, these applications get developed over time, but a lot of the key events will be Windows OS updates, right? When you're going from Windows 7 to Windows 10, that's a key event that happens when you go from, well, now just currently Windows 10 end of support, trying to get to Windows 11. And that jump is very difficult, especially for those legacy applications that don't know anything about what the new modern OS is going to look like or how it's going to function. Finally, you have sort of the multi-session environment. So if you're trying to go to Citrix, you have multi-session, non-persistent. A lot of these applications weren't designed to work in a multi-session environment, right? They didn't know anything about it back early on. So they just really don't work good in those modern OS deployment environments that you might have. Okay, so those are kind of the high level ones, at least for the legacy. So what's the solution? From Numecent's perspective, it's really to use application containers. That's really the key. If you think back to when Docker and Kubernetes first started taking off, 2019, 2020, when everybody started moving to it on the server side, that really helped all that server application management, because they could put their applications into a container that allowed them to do a lot of DevOps capabilities with those. And so we see the same thing with just Windows desktop applications, that if you can put everything into a container, you can eliminate those application compatibility issues because they'll be all self-contained. You can now achieve more of a single base image that you don't have to have installs onto, right? You can just do your OS updates, but you've separated that application. And it extends you so you can do DevOps capabilities, right? Now you can do your own pipelines to fully automate application deployments and updates and take advantage of those more modern DevOps techniques and tools. And finally, with that, you can start incorporating in machine learning, AI, to be able to even progress those pipelines further to fully automate and take advantages of what the new methods and user compute can give you. Having everything in a silo really is what's key here in the container. So let me tell you about Cloudpaging. So Cloudpaging is our Numecent technology. It's basically to deliver, virtualize any Windows desktop application onto whatever modern desktops, your Citrix VDI and DAS offerings out there, regardless of the operating system. Okay, so how is this done? Well, so let me tell you a little bit about the underlying technology here. So our container is very unique in the space. If you think again, something like a Docker, they have this isolation method because everything's in a silo and sandboxed off from the rest of the operating system. But Windows, at least desktop applications, are a little unique, right? If you go back, that one of the key aspects of these is that for a long time it's been this sort of open system, and developers can really do a lot more with these applications by integrating with each other. So you'll have, let's say an example is Excel. A lot of customers use Excel and they might need to extend it. Well, you can do plugins, right, for Excel. So there's hundreds and hundreds of plugins out there that enterprises are using for Excel. You want those to integrate together and work, because that's really where the power of these applications come from to do these workloads that you might have in your enterprise. Another example might be, let's say you're using AutoCAD from Autodesk, and you're with some AEC company and you're building a bridge. You're likely to use ProjectWise from Bentley, and together they integrate really well. So they might be separate publishers, but they've integrated their products. So you can easily, open up through ProjectWise your AutoCAD project for that specific part of whatever you're building. And that is key. So when we've developed our container, we made sure that we had this, what we call an integrated disposition layer. What we wanted to avoid was, we do have an isolated disposition layer, like you can see, and that is great for legacy apps that we'll talk about. And you can have isolated very containers interact with each other, but it's a lot of overhead to manage those. We didn't want to have that overhead. So this is why we have this integrated disposition, because for any, especially for modern apps, not so much for legacy apps, but for the modern apps, you want them to act as if they're installed. You want the other applications and the OS to see them. You just happen to want them in the container so they're fully sandboxed. And this is what the integrated disposition layer gives you. You might still have some one-offs. So we have what we call installed disposition layers, like layer 1 if you have some actual data that needs to stay on the system, or layer 2 if you happen to have some one-off drivers that need to be put down. And we fully manage those as well with versioning and ref counting. But for the most part, all the modern apps will sit in the integrated disposition layer, and then all the legacy apps will sit up here in the isolated disposition layer. So they really are separated from other applications and the Windows OS itself. So now with this container, you can really take, like we talked about early on, any of your legacy applications, put them in an isolated disposition layer, and any of those very complex modern applications, put them into this integrated disposition layer and have them fully functional. And these layers are not one per container. So you can actually have various parts of your container having these different dispositions. So if you have some type of application that has a Visual Studio runtime, you might make the runtime part isolated and not the main application. So it gives you a lot of flexibility, and that's why we have such a high success rate in packaging any Windows application that's out there. Okay, so now you kind of understand the container. You've taken your legacy application, so no longer do you have to have a one-off XP machine sitting in a dark server room somewhere running without security patches, which might sound funny, but I know enterprises do it because these applications they don't know how to get to run. But you also don't want to bring it to a modern OS and still have security issues from these legacy apps. Well, that's where the container also helps, because again, those components will be isolated. We also make sure that, again, other applications or even itself can't see other parts of the system. We have a sandbox, and we can keep everything in memory, so it doesn't even go to disk. We can prevent that application from modifying anything on the system. And we can disable any file copies. So you can't copy anything outside the container. And we uniquely encrypt per machine. So it's not like you could even go to that machine and take it and put it somewhere else. Because again, we want to make sure we've reduced any surface attack area that might come around for those legacy applications. So with that, let's dive into some examples here so we can kind of see how it works. CorelDRAW X4 was a very popular graphics editor, I think released around 2008. And that X4 format is no longer supported. So CorelDRAW obviously is still around, but you might have digital marketing teams that need the old format. You know, how are you going to get those to work? And I think, Todd, you have some examples of some of
Yeah, so for those of you who don't know, but well, Corel was a crown jewel of Canadian software company in the 90s, right? And you know, and today, although that their glory days are behind them, the Canadian federal government is the single biggest customer that's keeping them alive. And so anything Corel in their suite, so you know, including our next example, they're still being supported in what the customer supports them by keeping them installed in all the federal government computer images in Canada, right? So we're talking about upwards of 100,000 seats that still may have access to these tools, and then that when you go across 40 plus agencies that had their own little, even though that they're supposed to share all the share IT services, they still have their own requirements, their own security posture that they require depending on the function of different agencies or different departments in the government. Really, like keeping one legacy application, or in this case, a group of legacy applications, be able to be supported properly and pass all the security requirements by different agencies, different national security levels. It is truly a nightmare, right? And it still requires a lot of manpower to actually do that manually today. And so this solution really shines in a sense where, you know, you just mentioned, you encrypt your packages, you have the ability to unify all packaging or delivery. and encryption on top of all. And it's really incredible value to reduce a lot of human intervention and to be honest, no one really likes to do it either. Doesn't matter how much they get paid per hour to do it, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Yeah.
So let's talk through some of these challenges. You know, again, because this is such an old application, its installer doesn't know anything about Windows 11. So it can't install Windows 11, but even if you try to modify the installer to work with the Windows 11, it still won't install. And finally, even if you somehow install somewhere else and copy everything over, it won't run because it gets blocked on Windows 11. So
Yeah.
then, how do we solve this? So, well, interestingly enough, let me take you a little background here. Numecent didn't set out to solve legacy application problems, right? Uh, sort of, we were working on this, you saw, right? We've been doing this for 25 years or so. We started on our container sort of pre-XP days designing it. And XP came around and it was mainly 32-bit. So we made sure our container solution was updated, could work with XP. But we didn't want those old containers to stop working. So we made sure that they continued to work. And then, years later, Windows 7 came and it primarily was moving to 64-bit. So we updated our container work with 64-bit because we're always trying to make sure that modern applications work. And as part of that work effort, we made sure that the old containers would still work as well because we wouldn't want that work wasted. So you can see where this is going. We kind of fast forward here as our journey went with Microsoft and their Windows updates. We did the same thing. We have a virtual file system and we kept updating it along the way. And it just turns out it works really well for these legacy applications. Because, for example, let's say this CorelDRAW wants to write to my documents, a very XP toward a file path. Well, we make sure that it will be fine working with my documents, even though on the modern system, it's going to be under the user document profile somewhere. And so this is really the advantage that the container gives you because we can make sure that those applications work like they would expect to work, but really translated into the modern system. So with that, we primarily have two components. You're going to see the Cloudpaging player later on. We have also a Cloudpaging Studio, and this is the desktop application that will take an installer and convert it into a container. We still support installing that Cloudpaging Studio application onto Windows 7, Windows XP, because that will allow you to go onto the make a VM, in this case Windows 7, install Studio. You can install CorelDRAW 4 because it works no problem. Do the capture, put it into a container, and now you have that virtual file system sitting there. So when you move it to Windows 11, it's fully functional. Everything just works. And now you have a container to continue to move because as new operating systems come out, we'll develop for those operating systems and you can just move those containers to anyone you wish. Okay, let's take another example. WordPerfect 2.0. Again, I don't remember when this has actually even released. I do know it ended life somewhere in the mid-90s, so it's very old.
Yes.
It's
And WordPerfect is still a part of the standard Canadian federal government Windows image today.
It's amazing how long these applications last, isn't it? They just
Yeah.
they go on and they're used, and so that's why it's key. Okay, this is a challenge because it has 16-bit code in the application. So how do you deal with this? So on the cloud paging side, um, first, again, because you can install our Studio component, you can put it on a 32-bit OS, and WordPerfect will capture just fine, be put into the container. Now, we don't do emulation, but there are emulators out there. And again, the key component of the container is to put everything that's required for that application in the container. So if you have prereqs, if you have the application itself, if you might have an emulator, it can all go into container so that it can always be provisioned together You don't have to worry about configurations or anything else like that. In the container, you can set the command line to make sure that it can run through the emulator. And then you can even add shortcuts and file associations to the container so that it just appear, because really what we want is end users to use the application as if it was installed, right? We don't want it to be any different from their normal workday environment that they're used to. So this will get WordPerfect to work. There's some other challenging legacy applications, problems with legacy applications, outdated prereqs, whether that's Java or runtime libraries, not being able to run a multi-session OS, or making calls to old system DLLs. Again, this is all covered by the container because you can put in multiple versions. You can put in a version of Java. You can have different versions in different containers and know that they don't interact with each other. They don't interact with the underlying OS. You can put alternatives in there. Um, you can obviously isolate out any DLLs. And really, the key piece to the multi-session is that because we have a container in a Citrix environment, every user that logs in that multi-session environment will get their own application container. And that container is meant just to run within their user session. So this eliminates a lot of the problems that you might have with running in a Citrix environment, because every application will just be provisioned to that user when they log in. And this is also useful for just, frankly, some of the modern apps too that might have issues. Okay, so now you have your apps in container, right? We talked about legacy apps. We talked about modern apps. All of them can be put into a container. Now what? How do you actually manage all these apps at scale? So this is where Cloudpager comes in. Cloudpager is our cloud native container management platform for all your Windows desktop applications. They can organize and manage the life cycle of those applications, right? And that means dynamically provisioning applications to those end users or groups. Cloudpager can tie into your IDP. So let's say it's Azure Entra ID. Then you can go in there and associate these applications to your Entra ID users or groups. It will do the application deployments. You can do your application updates. You can do patching of those applications. You can even roll back. So let's say you put out a security patch and it's not what should be or it doesn't work correctly. You could roll that back to the previous version. And everything we do is metered and audited. So you can see the usage tracking of which users, used applications, how long they used them for, that sort of thing. And now this starts to get into DevOps work, right? Because we have a full set of APIs in PowerShell that allows you now to use sort of DevOps technologies like you would have done on the server side to really manage those applications and create, like I said, your own pipelines for these.
Right.
Okay, I think the next best thing is to try to see a demo. So I have a video here so you can
Right
actually see
before,
Cloudpager. Oh, go ahead.
right before you hit next on that, we do have a quick question.
Okay.
It reads, how do we publish Numecent applications through Citrix?
Yeah, you can actually publish them through Citrix as well. We have information for you. So if you're on a Citrix desktop, you can easily provision out to those desktops, and you'll kind of see that in a minute here. If you're trying to do virtual apps, we have instructions for that as well. So definitely we can make that available so we can easily provision these application containers to be your virtual apps. So when the users go to use those virtual apps, they're actually containers on the back end.
Perfect, thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So let's go into the video here and see it. So this is our Cloudpager platform. It'll have a dashboard. You'll have your applications and containers you upload. We have storefronts if you want to self-service or do integrations. But what you're going to see here is work pods. And work pods are a way to group applications for a specific function. So in this case, we're just going to make a contractor group. But it could have been, let's say you have a development team. It needs Visual Studio and maybe Git and some other tools, and you could group those all together to push them out. Here we're just going to do actually the examples that we talked about earlier, so some of those legacy apps, but it could have been the modern apps as well. We'll go ahead and assign this work pod to a group. Again, this is pulling from Entra ID. And then we're going to publish it out. Like I talked about, these are all audited, so you'll have timestamps and who did the changes, and you can add comments. But before we do this, we're going to jump over to the Citrix desktop just so you can see that real quick. So this is the desktop. As I talked about earlier, we have a cloud paging player. Now, this is just shown for the demo because it's easier to see. Normally, all this just happens behind the scenes. You don't have to have the player visible to your end users, or end users just use the normal start menu, file associations, that type of thing. So we're going to publish this, and pretty quickly here, you're going to see these applications start to appear on the desktop, and there they are. The containers all get virtualized for that user session in Citrix. You'll see, depending on how the container was packaged, they might have desktop shortcuts, they might have start menu shortcuts. That's all controllable, so you can decide how you want that to be. It'll definitely be sort of the default of the installers and what they would have created. So here we go. Here's draw X4. Again, you would normally just use the start menu to get to it. You can launch it. Oh, yeah, there it is, 2008. So that's when this version came out. So if you have old X4 formats, you can easily have this in a container, and it will come up and it'll work just like you would expect on any operating system, that it will just be functional here. Then again, we're showing you sort of these legacy apps, but this could have been a modern version too. So you could have the old X4 version and modern version of CorelDRAW all through the container. So this is just a quick show you that the application's functioning on this desktop. Next, we're going to move to the WordPerfect. As you can see in the desktop there, this is, again, an old 16-bit application. So it didn't actually have a desktop icon. We left it that way just for a demo, but you could easily have replaced it with an actual WordPerfect icon. Look at that old UI. Very nice. So yes, this brings you back to early days of Windows. It should. So that's WordPerfect. We have just another sample here of another 16-bit application, this family tree that, again, is pretty old, but it just gives you an idea of these applications and how easy it is once you put it into container to deploy it. So this is, I think, from what?
1994.
Yeah, quite old. And then we
I think we
briefly,
have audience. We have audience that are younger than that.
yeah, we probably do. I'm sure we do. And then we have these couple of Java versions. We just launched the Java versions. Typically, you'd have this with an actual application, right, that needed it. But this is just to give you an idea of each of these is its own container. They're both isolated from the system. So there's a version 8 and a version 19. But that gives you an idea that you can easily deploy these
Yeah,
multiple versions.
this is particularly useful if there's still a lot of, still some internal, I guess, quote unquote web apps that were developed internally for some enterprise organizations that require those JRE.
That's correct.
Yeah, then you can still keep it alive. Mostly, I hate to say it, even though you supposedly keeping alive for you to get back to the old data, but a lot of times that they just kind of actually still keep on running in production. So, this is definitely a very, very nice, problem solver.
Yeah. And this could have been other prereqs. It could have even been modern prereqs that you needed.
Yeah.
Okay. So now you've kind of seen you have your applications, legacy and modern, you put them into a container. You now put them into Cloudpager. So it's one management console. You don't have to have multiple different ways to do your delivery. You can scale that because on the Numecent side, we'll take care of obviously all the infrastructure and the scaling, but you can use your DevOps tools now to interact and just use the APIs to build pipelines. What's next? Well, really, like we talked about early on, now you can start to leverage machine learning and AI. So let's talk about how we do that. So you might have, again, your legacy apps, they were packaged, your modern apps, even those very complex ones. But we know there's a lot of applications out there that tend to update constantly, right? So Numecent came out with this AI packaging initially for WinGet applications. So think of something like Google Chrome that updates, seems like weekly. You don't want to be constantly repackaging that into a container. So with AI packaging, it's as simple as going into Cloudpager, selecting the app that you want to containerize, telling AI to package it. It will create a brand new container using all the best practices and provision that to your tenant. So now you have these applications that are constantly updating, but you don't need to even worry about creating containers for because we'll have that covered as well on the Cloudpager side, and we'll continue to extend this so that more of your modern apps can be leveraged using this technology to create a container, and it takes away, now it gives you time back to do actual provisioning these applications and not needing to worry about the creating containers out of them. So that's sort of the first step. We also talked a little bit about rapid delivery early on. So that's another key aspect to the Cloudpaging technology. So you have the container, but let's say you package Revit. Revit's going to be 8 gig container because it's massive. You don't want to be waiting 10 minutes for a container to download for your end users to use it, right? You need it there. You need it native as if it was installed because nobody wants to lose that install aspect. And that's where the rapid deployment of Cloudpaging comes in because we have what we call prefetch. So the paging aspect is when an application goes to run, it's going to do a page fault. And actually those instruction sets we're going to send to it. So our machine learning goes through and says, oh, what instructions does the application need to run? As you saw in the video, they run pretty fast. They deploy quickly, they run. So out of the box, you might get a 20% increase, but what's really beneficial is the more your end users use those applications, the smarter the deployment gets. So over time, you'll get much faster and faster delivery of these applications to those end user desktops. So kind of completes the circle, right? You put them in a container, the legacy ones, do those once they're done, the modern ones, you can leverage AI to package them. You can use Cloudpager to do all your deployment, your pipelines, and now you have this rapid deployment that goes on. So how does this help your Citrix teams? Well, obviously accelerates the modernization initiatives that you might have, right? Because now you can really get to the newer Windows 11 environment by making everything a container. It makes it much easier, starts to extend into DevOps capabilities. You don't need to worry about infrastructure anymore since that's fully managed by Numecent. As far as the container technology parts, it eliminates a lot of these obstacles, right? You don't have to worry about a downtime for application updates because now if they're all in a container, it's quickly to deploy the updates, quickly to roll back if you need to. You can start to really automate those deployments more than you have in the past. And it'll reduce costs, obviously, because now you can use AI to do a lot of those packaging, focus more on the deployments, retire all those legacy tools and hardware that you were using for those legacy apps, really drastically reduce the cost.
Yeah. Well, and more importantly, I think that it really achieves that, the old saying with Citrix, it's the power of one. The having that one consistent golden image for the base operating systems You don't need to make exceptions. You don't need to make compromises, and you can just manage Windows as Windows and apps as apps, right? Completely separate those two layers, and that is where it actually comes in terms of speed, right? From from all our experiences that dealing with large scale Citrix projects, a lot of times it's that back and forth between, well, which version of the operating system image are we going to certify? Well, because this one has that, we need to actually certify this one, but this one has we have to have something else, and that back and forth is really what's time consuming in the entire project.
Right.
Yeah.
Kind of off a similar topic, we have a question from Eugene that he asks, care to speak to handling the CPU utilization by older 16-bit apps, KBD polling?
Say that again. What was it? The
He
question
says,
of six.
yes, he says, care to speak to the handling of CPU utilization by older 16-bit apps.
Yeah, sure. So obviously, well, back then Windows was a much simpler operating system than it is today. You have a lot more options today with how the CPU will, provision, prioritize to use how much usage you want to give to those 16-bit apps. So by having it in a container and having sort of this emulator for those 16-bit apps, you can actually go through and configure so that you can have, only so much CPU available to those type of containers. It'll give you a much better performance. Yeah, because I'm sure you're considering when you have it in the Citrix environment, you don't want them to use up all your CPU. But yeah, again, luckily you get some tools from Microsoft, and with everything in the container, it makes it much easier to just leverage, take that emulator and reduce the scope of what it can use on your CPU.
Great, thank you, Doug. And then we have one more. So this one kind of goes back to how you publish Numecent applications through Citrix.
Mhm.
Yes, do we have a command line for publishing these apps through Citrix instead of opening within a published desktop? And just to give a little bit more light, he says we have an application that is used across 3 different time zones. We are hosting it on 3 separate images today since applications config in different, like systems, DSN, config file, etc. If we package this application, can we launch all 3 instances from a single Citrix server? So that's 2 questions, and I can back it up if you need.
Yeah, you definitely can. And I don't want to give away too much because there's some new announcements coming with Citrix. So I can't leave it at that. But yes, there's going to be much easier methods here pretty soon to do your Citrix integration. But even today, you can still set those up, and you can definitely have multiple containers running. That's not a problem.
Thank you.
Okay. So let's go to sort of a customer success story to tie this all up. So Numecent, we worked with a lot of big banking and financial institutions, and this is several years ago now. But we had a large bank that was trying to do this is Windows 10 timeframe. So they were trying to go from 2012 Windows Server version to 2019 for their Citrix environment. Right? They had 100,000 employees. And if you recall at the time of Windows 10, Microsoft had some type of compatibility tool that you could run, and it would tell you how many apps will actually run on Windows 10. They ran it. It told them there's about a 40% failure rate of these apps going to work on Windows 10. They had already started investing in AppV at the time, but even with AppV, they could only get about 70% of their applications, probably less than that, to work. So they were trying to come up with strategies of multiple base images, one-off instances still to have Windows 7. So we came in and we told them, well, you already spent all the time on AppV. We can run fine next to AppV, no problem. So they used us to package that as 70% of the difficult apps that AppV couldn't, and that were going to be a failure rate. And it was a great success because they were able to get 100% of their applications working. And to Todd, just so like you mentioned, that single base image is what they achieved. And that was such a big, important step for them. They got their 100,000 users, 300 plus applications, all on that single base image by leveraging what they had in AppV plus Cloudpaging, and they finished ahead of schedule. And to extend this, they had now to go to Windows 11 migration, right? Last year. So they went to 2022 server. By this time, they had mostly moved all their AppV applications into Cloudpaging. They didn't even have to really put a project together for the application parts because all those application containers just worked. They just had to make sure they updated all their Citrix environment. And by having single image, it was so much easier to achieve. Really, they didn't have to worry about all this overhead of trying to do a big migration project.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would add that for when I ran Citrix Consulting Services, we had deal with some other big financials that are in this size, and obviously they didn't have the solution like that. And just on the application rationalization effort, we have delivered the SOWs that are upwards of in the thousands of hours to actually deliver these projects, and it took the project took drag on for for an extra year just so that it actually can actually make it happen. So the time difference that you're gonna show with with containerization or not containerization is night and day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly correct. So I'll pass it back to you, Todd.
Yeah. So like so to go back to what I just said, right? It's the it's the time to your result, right? And I think that the Cloud Pager is really the solution to manage these enterprise complex application sprawling issues and keep it current, keep going forward. We have hundreds of years of experiences when it comes to designing an enterprise virtual desktops and app solution. Or today, it could be really if you want to go to the physical desktop, that's fine too. But the we have so much experiences on actually design that properly for the most complex organizations, and I think that combined together, we really try. We will really try to help you to get to that result much faster than you think. And time is like I said, time is money, and that will save you a lot of money, a lot of time, a lot of human resources. So yeah, so that's really together what we bring to our customers. Yeah, we're looking forward to work with all of you to make this happen.
Absolutely. So while we wait for a few more questions to roll in, Todd, did you have any questions for Doug? Or vice versa?
Yeah, I have I got this question that people actually my team asked me because since we're co-author of the masters end user infrastructure, we're in touch with all these technologies on a daily basis. And one of the objections that I heard from from my old friend Harry Labana, who was the cloud volume guy for VMware. He's like, what is this different than the app volume that VMware has, or
Right.
today Omnissa has?
Yeah, a great question. And sort of app layering can have its place, but it has a lot of downsides compared to a container as well, right? So While you have a lot of in these Citrix environments, mostly Citrix usage, and that might work well, you always still have some of these one-off, executives might have laptops or some of these one-off systems, which makes it difficult when you have a layer, because really what you'd like to have is one single application package, whatever that is, right? And if you can move that package seamlessly to the different environments that you support, that's really the easiest thing. And that's what the container allows you to do. It's much harder to move an app layer. It's also harder to maybe to maintain. Sometimes those layers are fine. Sometimes when they're complex apps, you try then to upgrade your base image, you're still forced to redo that app layer because it might have been tied to that base image in some certain way. And it also makes it difficult if you have, some of our customers, they might deliver, 40, 50, some of them were doing up to 90 app containers per user. That gets very complex if you're trying to do it with app layering. Yeah.
Thank you. We have time for one more question, and that is, how does AI packaging impact these large-scale migrations?
AI packaging is obviously very useful because as you're trying to go through, again, there are many common apps out there, whether it's Google, Chrome, or some of these other key small applications that you have, even large applications, Autodesk and others, with not having to create those containers constantly, especially because of the updates. It's one thing about a legacy app, you're probably doing it once, you don't have to do it again. But when you have to constantly do it, and you can think of the same thing for any other technology, if you're constantly rebuilding your app layers because of new versions, or trying to constantly install installers, it's just, time is money, and it takes away from you that needing to do this manually. You have to have some dedicated team. That's really the leverage and power of AI, is now the AI can do that piece, free up your team to actually do the deployment work that they need to do. Yeah, it's great.
Well, thank you so much. I think we can go ahead and move into our next steps for everyone. So if you have any other questions, please email us at hello@farouksystems.com. You can also reach us that way to set up your own custom Cloudpager demo. I also want to encourage you to scan the QR code to learn about our Microsoft Ignite experience here with Numecent. We have an exclusive evening with them at Fang Restaurant. And we also have discounted conference passes, and I know that is next week, so you are running out of time if you're interested.
Yeah, for sure. I look forward to see many of you in San Francisco, and yeah, we taking down this journey together.
Absolutely. Well, thank you all so much for attending. Any last notes, Doug or Todd?
No, thanks for having me. It's been great being on together today.
Yeah, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.